Handle Your Business with Bobby Dino. This is an exciting day because we have the man, a literal myth, living out in the forest somewhere. Nobody knows where he's at. Roman Mcclay. Roman, thank you for joining us. For those that don't know Roman, he is the author of Sanction, which has got all the momentum in the world behind it right now. Glad to have you here, man.
Hey, Bobby, thank you. It's my honor, man.
I appreciate that. I've been wanting to talk to you for some time. As a matter of fact, you and I have been texting and talking in the past, even before this whole YouTube channel thing came about. You've got quite an interesting thing happening right now. Being your book, Sanction, it's picking up a lot of steam with people. I see it online across different social media platforms. People are really into it. There's a movement behind it. People are trying to get movies made, get you on Joe Rogan. How does this feel, man?
Weird. It's very weird. You know, you and I have talked, you and I share some common data points for our lives, sure. Some pretty, and we knew that when we first started talking, we kind of had that virtual look in the eye. We knew we were cut from the same cloth. And we also have some serious similarities in our backgrounds. And these are important things. So we knew that.
Right.
But the details need filled in. And so some of the details are that when I wrote the book, I had zero expectation or even intention of selling it. It was a pure labor of love, right? I did it because I had to,
Mm-hmm.
And once it was done, though, I said, well, I would like to actually try to sell this thing. I'd like people to read it. But I had no expectation. So I go on Twitter a year ago, right about now. In fact, the birthday of the book was yesterday or the day before.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. And so I just went on Twitter and I just started posting stuff. And, I didn't really have much of an expectation because I thought the book is too weird to be read. I really believed that.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I found is I was wrong. And this is something I've adjusted to. I'm in my mid-40s now. I'm 45. And I've adjusted to the fact that I'm going to be wrong a lot. Yeah. And so I was wrong. People have loved it. They've embraced the book. They've embraced me as a consequence. And so it's been a wild ride. And I'm very appreciative of the people who got me here, believe me, because it's our friends, people that you and I
Right.
have in common, and yourself, who have promoted me, demanded that people read the book,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm very, very grateful. And I am not oblivious to the fact that without the help of our friends, I would not be here.
Sure. And that's absolutely true as well for any of you that are watching. A lot of people think it's who you know, when in reality, it's who knows you. You can know a lot of different people, but the reality is, unless they're taking the time out of their life to get to know who you are, to get to know what your backstory is, that's what makes the difference. Nobody does any of this stuff alone. Nobody owns, these people. You don't own a movie studio. You don't own a recording studio or the distribution process. You need the help of these other people or companies to get things going. And you're right. And that goes for me as well. Mutual friend of ours, Ivan Throne, he was the first one when I started writing that was shouting it from the rooftops as well. And in private conversation with Ivan, not to give up our private talks too much, but he's spoken very highly of you and has been very excited about what you have to do. And in turn, it makes me excited. His excitement, others' excitement. You've got this momentum right now, which is really neat to see. And when you're friendly with someone, at least for me, when you're friendly with someone, you like seeing them make it. That's not a jealousy thing. You're like, yes, get that money, son. You're like happy, So for those that don't know, because you are kind of this, like I was saying at the beginning, this mysterious, mythical, great bearded man who lives in the woods, right?
Right.
Nobody knows where he's at. If we want to find you, we need like GPS coordinates, longitude and latitude coordinates. So that's how we get to you. So
Yeah.
who is Roman Mcclay? Who is the man, or let me rephrase this. What would you like people to know Roman Mcclay as? Like, who are you? What is your story?
Yeah. So, okay. So there's kind of two vectors that I think about when you ask that question. And I would like to back up and just say that I too want to mention Ivan Throne. He's been a great help to me. He's spoken very highly of you. I think at one point on Twitter, he said you were the greatest storyteller of our age. And I liked and retweeted that because I agreed, man. I mean, your stories are amazing.
Thank you.
But yeah,
Thank
to
you.
answer your question, yeah, you won't. So to answer your question, the book itself, I think, if someone just read the book, and when I say the book, I mean all three, because it really is one book. It's broken up into 3 volumes, but so I refer to it as the book, but that means all 3 of them. So
right.
If someone read all 3 of those books, they would have a pretty good idea of who I am. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, to give a little bit of a Cliff Notes version of it, basically, I was a working class guy my whole life. Okay, I'm not a college graduate. I have no technical expertise. I have no degrees or imprimatur from Harvard or Yale. I have none of that.
Right.
Melville once said that a whale ship was his Harvard and his Yale college, and I feel the same. You know, the oil field was my Harvard and my Yale college. You know, I learned to be a human being and a man in the milieu of the oil field, and I was a ranch hand. I worked on a farm. I've worked construction, drilling and blasting, you know, these kinds of jobs. And that I spent almost my entire adult life in these domains. And as you know, because you have a similar working class background, this does shape who you are.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's just no escaping it. It becomes who you are. Okay, so that's important for people to know. But I'm not someone that went to college and imagined what this would be like, because the book is heavily working class, and so this was not something I read a book about. It's something I lived, and that's important to me. And you know how it is with us working class guys, man. We take pride in that, and it can be annoying for some people, but we don't care because we're proud of it. And so that's important. Couple of data points. At 24, I joined what they would call an intentional community, which is just a euphemism for a cult. So I joined a cult for a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was very weird. And it's in the book too, you know. And
okay.
But it was interesting because one of their rather.
Uh-oh. We've lost audio.
Okay.
Hold on. It's catching up right now.
Okay. You just
okay,
let
there
me
you
know.
go. It's back. Yeah, it's doing this weird thing to where it pauses, like goes super duper slow, and then all of a sudden it's like fast forward, like it just, you know, to where it's, I don't know, it's like the signal's being slowed down and it's trying to catch up. Don't worry, we'll edit it. Tiger, you see this from when he lost sound? Anytime where he loses sound, please just cut it out. Thank you. Okay. Note to the editor. Anyways, go ahead and give us just give like 2 or 3 seconds, and then you can go ahead and pick up where you left off, and he'll just cut that part out.
Roger that.
Okay.
So at 24, I joined a cult. It was called Zendik Farm. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, and their main focus was on a concept called radical honesty. Okay. And what that meant is you say all the stuff in your head that you normally keep cool because you don't want to upset the apple cart. And both the good and the bad. So, if you love someone, you tell them you love them. If you hate them, you tell them you hate them, you know. But the point was, you said whatever was in your head. And I thought I was a pretty honest guy when I moved there. I think there was a culture shock for me, because these guys were saying things I'd never heard people say, you know. And so it was a culture shock for me. And so I started to kind of get into it, like, you know, week 4, week 5, week 6. I'm like, okay, I can kind of handle this. By month 6, I really felt like I was getting going in this. And one of the things I did is I signed off over all my property. I had a car and various stuff, and signed it all over, because that was part of the deal, is that you had to commit fully. And I believed in that. You know, it's like either you're all in or you're all out. And to this day, I still believe that's the way you should live your life. So I was like, yeah, exactly. So I said, no problem. I gave them all my stuff. And I took to this radical honesty thing quite severely. And I spoke my mind. And so I got kicked out. Boom, you're gone. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Because I don't play well with others. At least at 24, I didn't. I do a little better now.
Sure.
And so they kicked me out, but they kept all my stuff. So I was broke, homeless, done, right? I had a pair of work gloves and $10. That was it, man. And so I saw a newspaper ad. I moved to Colorado. I actually was able to get a flight to Colorado because I was in Florida at the time, Vero Beach. No, I'm sorry. I was in North Carolina at the time. It was Asheville in the Blue Ridge. I get a flight to Colorado, and I see a newspaper ad, and it just says explosives laborer. Right? I'm like, I get to work with dynamite. I'm in. Right? Yeah. So yeah, right. So they tell me the job. It's basically rock climbing, drilling into granite, putting dynamite in the hole, linking them together, and blowing the rock face out. Okay.
Nice.
That's the job. Oh, it was beautiful.
Nice. Yeah.
So I learned to rock climb. You know, I learned all the knots you need, all the, you know, the ascenders, the carabiners, all the equipment. I understood all that. I learned to drill. I learned how to use dynamite, blasting caps, the whole 9 yards. And I did that for a little over a year. So through a summer and a winter. And we did it, didn't matter how cold or how much snow, we drilled, man. And we worked, you know how it is. It's sun up to sundown, you know. Yeah. So in the summer, you're working
sometimes longer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I did that for a couple years and was able to, you know, I slept on the shop floor for the first 6 weeks because I didn't have a paycheck. And my company let me. They said, well, I said, look, I'm homeless. They said, okay, you can sleep on the shop floor, which was, you know, you're grateful at that point because they could have said,
a gift.
That's a gift. Like you're happy to sleep on a concrete floor. Like, you know, so that's a data point in my life. Yeah. You know, take note of that. I was grateful for a concrete floor and a roof over my head. Okay. Sure. So then I started making some pretty good money because, you know, when you're working, you get hazard pay if you're working up above 10 feet, you know, and we were 70, 80, 100 feet off the ground on sheer face. So we got hazard pay. So I'm making $25 an hour as a 25, 26-year-old. I'm pretty happy. You know, and you're working that many hours and you're basically working 28 out of 30 days a month. Yeah. So I was making some scratch.
Did they call it turnarounds? Or did they call it something? We used to call those turnarounds. So you'd work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. So the guy that came and relieved you of your shift, when you came to work, you were relieving him of his shift. Like it was just this, you get what I'm saying? That's the turnaround. Like it's, you'd come home and you turn right back around and go to work.
Yeah. So in the oil field, absolutely, that's the way it was. Yeah. But for this, it wasn't like that. We only worked basically daylight and a little bit into dark. But in the oil field, you're right. It's 12 and 12. We called them towers, right? So you're on tower. Okay. Yeah. But for this, we were the only crew. We worked daylight hours. And so I made a good amount of money. I started to build up my infrastructure again, got a car, motorcycle, apartment, you know, I was doing pretty well. Yeah, it was good. And then I moved to Hawaii. I got I got a note from a friend saying, hey, why don't you come to Hawaii and work here? We're doing drilling here. And so I wanted to go to Hawaii, so I did. And I lived there for a year. And same thing, up high rise, but now drilling on buildings instead of rock, you know, doing that. But same kind of thing, you know, you're up off the ground, you're drilling, heavy labor.
Would you do? Did you do like booms, like you take a man lift up on the buildings, or was it still scaling type shit, or how did that work?
So yeah, no, we had scaffolding, but you know how they lower them down. Yeah, they're on motors and they go up and down. 2-man. And the wind would come and blow it way away from the building, so you're 20 feet away from the building. And those Hawaiians were like, you know how they talk. They're like, you go surfing today, Matt. You go surfing, because that's what they would call it. It's like when the scaffold would blow away from the building, you're surfing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but you know, you got a lanyard on, and so if you fall, you won't die. But anyway,
hopefully,
yeah. And so I did that for a year, and then I came back to Colorado, and that's when I got into the oil field. And the oil field was a whole new thing, man. I thought I'd worked hard jobs until I worked the oil field, man. And that, the average person, and you know this, lasts 3 days and they're gone, because it's just too hardcore, man. Yeah. It's too hardcore. The hours are brutal. The work, the heaviness of everything is brutal. The environment is just mean. Everyone, right? It's like 100 John Waynes all in one bar fight. Like everyone's John Wayne.
Yeah.
No one backs down. No one, including this guy. Like no one backs down. And so it's just hardcore the whole time. And, you know, I broke my neck when I was younger in a motorcycle accident.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And what had happened is, as I started to get older, you know, I'm in my mid-30s now, it's starting to collapse. The vertebra itself is collapsing under the weight of this big fat noggin of mine. And so it's just getting worse and worse. And plus the tendons, the muscles are all being stretched and torqued, and I'm just breaking down.
Right.
But you know how it is for us macho guys. We don't want to admit. We're like, no way. I'm as strong at 38 as I was at 28. And so, yeah, you get a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, and you just work even harder, and you just push it even more. And that is a data point too I want people to understand, is that physical pain, especially chronic pain from work, gives a man a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. He feels like, hey, I've broke my body on the wheel of this society. I've done this. So when you flip a light switch, your lights come on, right? Because we're drilling gas out of the earth to feed the natural gas plant that feeds your electricity in your house, right? And you get a little bit of an attitude about it. You know, you think, hey, I broke this body so you can do your podcast, right? Right. And so I think that's a data point too.
Yeah. That's it's interesting that you bring that type of stuff up, because we've talked before about similarities that you and I have, and working in those environments, like you're saying, it's not only the work that's really gnarly. For me, as people know, you know, with my incarceration and whatnot, for me, working in the oil industry was, as far as the people were concerned, was worse than being incarcerated. Because at least when you're incarcerated, there's this underlying thing of, okay, we all respect one another. Nobody wants to get in a fight. Nobody wants to where out there, they're not even worried about that shit, because a lot of them don't even know. So they're just talking any old which way they want. Oh, fuck you, you know, this and that and whatever. And it's like, you have this mentality, or at least I did for a decade, to where if somebody talked a certain way to me, like I could take it somewhere else if I wanted, you know. And now I'm in polite society on parole, even at that point, because I was still, right when I came out, you know, obviously on parole and working. And you can't do anything, you know. It's like you're kind of stuck. I get that. Did you have, were there any points in your life to where you were, did you ever have any run-ins with the law or anything like that, to where you have you is that something that you can talk about, or is that something that's supposed to remain redacted, or
No,
what do we do with that?
yeah, I can talk about it a little bit. So yeah, I have made contact with law enforcement many times in my life. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I've been in trouble since day one.
Yeah.
I just have that personality, and I get into this in the book
Mm-hmm.
because I actually think some people actually they have the personality to end up in jail. I believe that. They just have it because they don't like anyone telling them what to do. They buck the forces, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
and one of the things I talk about is the genetics of, like, you know, mountain people. So my people are the Scottish Highlanders. Both sides
Sure.
of my family come from that. So I have that Scottish gene for rebellion.
Right.
But there's many cultures that have that. You know, the Mongolian steppe, or you know, the Albanians have the mountain mindset. You know, as honor cultures. You know, if you say
Right.
one word, our
Right.
families will be fighting these feuds for 7 generations because of one insult. You know, and you
Mm-hmm.
know that, and this
Mm-hmm.
in our culture now, that's just unacceptable. You're supposed to eat it. So some guy says "fuck you" down from the crow's nest in the derrick, you're supposed to just eat it. Whereas guys like me and you are like, what did you just say? You said
Yeah.
"fuck you" to me? Like, now that's it. We're gonna fight. Period.
Yeah. Yeah.
And okay, so I was in petty trouble for much of my life. Okay, nothing serious. I didn't catch a felony charge until 2012, and so I would have been, let's see, what is that? I would have been like 38, 39.
Okay.
So I was to the felonies. Before that, it was just misdemeanors.
Yeah.
And I called a felony charge for felony weapons charges. Basically,
Okay.
these guys surrounded me and tried to test me, and I pulled my firearm. You know, I said, "Let's get
Yeah.
it on." You know,
Yeah.
and they backed off. You know, they said, "Okay, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. Right.
Right." And I said, "Cool." And I reholstered my weapon. I said, "Then we're good." And I had made my exit. I thought I'm all good. State of Colorado did not like that at all,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
they pressed charges immediately. So one of the stories I was telling Ivan and Alexander when they were here in Denver,
Mm-hmm.
or there in Denver, um,
Right.
we stayed at the Brown Palace, right? And
Okay.
the Brown Palace is a nice place. And
Mm.
I was making good money at the time. I had my own business. I was making good money. And so when they put the warrant out for me, I couldn't go home. And my lawyer said, "Look, don't go home because they'll pick you up on a weekend and you'll stay the whole weekend. You know how it is. You
Right.
won't bond out."
Yep.
He said, "Why don't you go hole up somewhere?" I said, "Well, I'm going to go hole up at the Brown Palace, man. Get me a 5-star hotel for the weekend, get room service." So I spent the weekend at the Brown Palace waiting to get taken in. And so
Right.
I finally turned myself in on Monday, but they had the full SWAT team ready for me because I had a bolo out, you know, armed and
Oh wow.
dangerous.
Oh yeah. 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 That's no good.
Yeah. No, once you
Yeah.
have that bolo out,
A bolo, for
it
those
doesn't.
that don't know, is be on the lookout. And
Yeah.
if you've got to be on the lookout for this armed and dangerous individual that's already pulled a weapon on other people, they're not coming for you with smiles on their faces. They're
No.
coming with weapons drawn, making you lay down prone on the ground, all that
Yep.
stuff. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm knowing, man. I actually, something similar. I thought this was actually one of my first weapon, or no, I believe this was my second weapons charge, because I had a few of those when I was younger myself. But I but luckily I was able to do misdemeanors with a couple of them. It wasn't, you know, but once you get a felony, you aren't getting misdemeanors anymore. They're going to just try and keep throwing felonies at you. But similar thing to where I had a guy that was that was at this bar that I was at tell me that next time he saw me, he was going to kill me. So I was out in front of my house hanging with a few people, and I see this white truck, which looked just like the dude's truck that said that shit, pulls down comes to the beginning of my street, turns the lights off, and then starts driving slow down my street. I was like, nope, 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 nope. I had a 12 gauge right on the inside of the door of my house, right? So I just grabbed it and I had it down the side of my leg. Well, he stopped, and then he like sped up, like hit the like drive-by style, right? So I was just like, right? And as soon as I came out with that thing, it was like, you know, and it took off. Well, it turns out he was a repo guy.
Oh,
Looking to it wasn't even the dude, it was
uh,
someone else. I straight drew down on this fucking repo dude just looking for a
uh,
car, right? So about 10-15 minutes later, I'm still standing outside with that shotgun. It's like one in the morning, right?
right.
I see some movement in the bushes down at like the end of the street, and I pull up on it. Whoop, right? I'm like looking, right? And then just something in my mind went, oh fuck. And I ran over to my garage. I threw that fucking shotgun up on top of this shelf that I had. I came out in the middle of the street and went like this. As soon as I did that, I swear to God, they were coming out of people's backyards. They were
Yeah.
coming like from down the street, from like all the, get out. It was Anaheim SWAT, right?
Yeah.
I remember this dude, when he got on my back, he was telling me, don't you fucking move. And like, let's say this was my head right here, I could feel the barrel of his gun bouncing off the back of my head. And in my mind, I'm thinking, you know, I'm laying prone on the ground and I'm like going, be cool, man. It's all good. I'm not doing nothing, you know. But in my mind, I'm thinking, this dude's about to accidentally shoot me in the head. Like, he
Yep.
was so amped up that I could feel like it, you know. So I guess that whole little rundown I did for you guys, it's no joke when SWAT comes for you, or if SWAT's got a mission for you. Like, they're ready to blast you. And I was
Yeah.
lucky that when I drew up on that bush that I saw moving, that they didn't just fucking smoke me right there. You know, it was just like some kind of thing just came into my mind where I was like, oh shit. Like, I knew, you know. When you turned yourself in, did you immediately bond out and all that, or?
Pretty much. I had a $75,000 bond,
Okay.
and so I was in overnight. I posted, you know, your 10%. I had
Right.
cash, so I gave my
Yeah.
bondsman 7,500. But I also had to put up my house,
Yeah.
as collateral.
Right.
And so I did that, and they bonded me out the next day. So I only spent one day for that, which was fine. But then the whole thing took another 2 years.
Mm.
And I was on basically probation. You know, it's called a deferred judgment. You know what it is. It's,
Yeah.
you plead guilty to the felonies. They strip you of your rights. You can't have a firearm. They took my concealed weapons permit. They took all that. I'm on probation. I've got to see a probation officer once a month. I have to see a court-ordered psychiatrist. I think
Oh
it was
wow.
twice a month. I've got to pay fines, all this stuff. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
the whole thing cost me $250,000 before it was done. Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but at the end of the 2 years, I was able to actually get those felonies expunged from my record. They come off.
Okay.
I get my concealed weapons permit back, which, as a note, there's only 20 people in the history of the state of Colorado who have ever lost their permit and got it back. And I'm one.
Wow. Wow. So when
Yeah,
they expunged your record in that state, they let you have a firearm again?
that's right. And they
Yeah.
denied it. They denied it at first. So I reapplied. They sent me a letter. The sheriff of Denver said, "No, what, are you crazy?
Yeah.
You have a history of violence and firearms.
Yeah.
You can't." But the law in Colorado is shall issue state. That means they have to give it to you unless you have a felony conviction. And mine were expunged. So I technically had no felony conviction. And so
Oh,
they
wow.
had to give it to me. And my lawyer went to the mat for me. He's a great guy. My lawyer is amazing. I mean, the guy literally spent time in a Chinese prison. He was working for the State Department at the time, got picked up by the Chinese. State Department says, we don't know him.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So he came out of that Chinese prison angry at the U.S. government for obvious reasons, and he became a defense attorney because he wanted to get guys like me off, and he got me
Right.
off. Like, it took a long time and a lot of money, but he got me off. Like, I ended up.
That's awesome.
No, I mean, the financial part was devastating, but I ended up with no felony convictions from that. And so I got my weapon permit back, got my weapons back, a clean slate. But yeah, that, besides the little stuff, and there's tons of little stuff, that was the major one in my life.
Yeah. And when you talk about, because we were talking earlier about how when you come from the working class background, that you do get a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, that it molds your thinking, right? Because you're around these, to paraphrase, you're around these John Wayne types, like how you were saying, everybody thinks they're John Wayne. As a writer, how do you think that shaped your ethic as a writer? Like how do you think, not necessarily the stories you write, but just your MO, and we can even go beyond writing, just life in general. Like, what effect do you think that had on your MO pre-Roman, doing all that stuff, and after?
Yeah, so if I had to analyze it, I would say that it made my writing style earthy. And I mean that in both senses of the word. So, I'll just drop slang and curse words right in the middle of a paragraph. I don't care, because I just speak that way. And so it makes my writing earthy. But I also think that it made my metaphors earthy. So I compare things often to machinery, or the digging in the dirt, all the things that made up my life. Like, my life was surrounded by the earth, dirt, rock, soil, rain, hail, because you work in all those conditions, around big machinery, diesel motors, derricks up, 60, 70 feet in the air. Like, I was surrounded by heavy machinery and the earth a lot. And so a lot of my metaphors come from that, right? So I don't compare things to what many writers might compare them to. I compare them to my environment. And so I think that's how it shaped me. When you read Sanction, you'll see I'm constantly comparing things to machinery or the earth. You'll just see those kind of metaphors come up a lot. And I think that's how it impacted me.
It's funny when you said that Sanction, you refer to it as, because I hear you referring to it as one book, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from our past talks, I believe you told me that you wrote it all over the course of like less than a year, right? All of it?
Yeah, 10 months.
10 months. Okay, wow. And I've seen what the first book looks like as far as just volume, and that's one book, right? So I mean, you were writing like a madman, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think that madness, it's embarrassing to talk about. I think we all have an aversion to mental illness. We feel a little nervous about it in ourselves and others. It just kind of gives us the creeps. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that I went a little mad, and that the process was imbued with madness. And I say that with neither bravado nor chagrin. I mean, it just is what it is. And I was a little crazy. And I worked all day, every day, until it was done. And so that's how I got it done in 10 months, is because I had nothing else on my mind except get this book done. Because it was what led up to it was a total, well, the euphemism is financial reversal. But guys like me and you say, I went broke. And, and I went so broke that I went from making about 25 grand a month in cash to making zero. And all my assets taken. I mean, I was down to nothing. I had my land that I had bought previously, and I had a little bit of money, but not much. I had barely enough. And I basically had enough to write the book. I could build my house, because I don't know if people know, but my land was feral, it was raw, there was nothing above ground nor below. So when I moved out here, I lived in a tent for 5 months while I built my house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I poured the foundations, dug the ground for the septic system, the cistern, all that, right? Laid the foundation, brought the Connex boxes on top. They were raw cans. I had to use my
Yeah.
plasma cutter and my welder to cut the thing open and weld in doors and windows. I mean, pour the concrete. I did it. I had help here and there, but I pretty much did it myself.
That's so awesome, man.
But I lived in a tent while I did that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And so once I moved in, I basically moved in a couple months before the new year, but I finished the house on New Year's Day, 2018. And then I had 10 months basically where I just wrote nonstop. And I would go and hunt in the forest for my food because I was so broke I really couldn't even afford to go to the grocery. So I had to hunt for my food.
Wow.
Yeah. And when I was out in the forest hunting, I was hunting nocturnal animals. So we have black bear here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was hunting them. And so I'd sleep during the day. And I had a dream. I had a very vivid dream. And it basically, when I woke up, I don't know if you know this about me, but I was an atheist for 20, 25 years.
I think that's come up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not the length of time, but I remember the atheism part.
Yeah. And I was pretty hardcore atheist. And
Mhm.
I woke up and I was a believer, man. Like God came to me in that dream and that was it. I was like, yep, I'm on board now. I work for you, God. And and the story manifested as part of that dream. And so when I got back to the house, I felt compelled to transcribe this vision into the novel as quickly as possible because I was scared I was going to lose the muse. That it was, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
So I was just like, I got to get this out before it goes away because this is a gift and it could have an expiration date, you know?
Right.
And so I went all in. And then when I got it done, I said, okay, cool. And now I can edit it a little bit. I published the first volume. I didn't even know what I had. I had no idea. I had 3 million words.
You had 3 million words.
Yeah. And
wow.
And 2/3 of it was nonsense. Okay. And so I scrapped that. But what was left was 1.2 million words. And the publisher said, well, look, we can't, that's 2,400 pages, bro. You can't do a book that big. And so I said, well, I'll break it into 3 then, about 800 pages per book.
Right.
So about 450,000 words per book.
Right.
And then I could edit it, clean it up, whatever. But that's why it was broken up into 3 is because it was just too big physically to put in one book.
Well, you know, Tolkien, the Lord of the Rings to Tolkien was one book. Like, so when he wrote that book, it was the Lord of the Rings. And then it was broken up similarly for what you're talking about, similar purposes. Then we had the Two Towers, Return of the King, all that, that where they broke it down. But that was a single volume or intended by him to be one single story as well. And for anybody that's ever read Tolkien or ever even tried to even venture into the Lord of the Rings, that's quite a series itself. It's easier to watch the movies by far than it is to read those books. Not out of bad writing. I love the writing. That's still probably my favorite. If I were to say book as he intended, it's still probably my favorite book out there, Lord of the Rings. It's great. As far as writing goes, when you're talking about the muse that you have, let's say that someone doesn't, as you did, wake up one morning and just be like, oh my God, I got to get this out. I have to do this. Maybe they don't have that same type of thing, but they're wanting to get into writing, right? Is there any type of exercise or ritual or operation that you suggest someone who wants to get into writing to undertake or do?
Sure. So I will give advice with the caveat that this is what worked for me, may not work for you. All right. Mm-hmm. Having said that, people come to me sometimes and say, hey, explain this, explain that. And one of the biggest things that I think of is that I don't think I could have written this book still living in Denver, in my house, in a neighborhood with a job. I think I needed total isolation. I think I needed that, where I didn't have anyone around me. Because Bobby, I'm there. I see no people. I see I see wild turkey. I see bear. I see mountain lion, deer, elk. I see no people out here. And
Yeah.
and so I needed that, because then you can get in that zone and nothing snaps you out of it. Like, I got no phone calls, no texts, no social media. I didn't have any of that. And so my entire day was quiet, isolated, and I could focus. Now, that was important for me. Some people can write with distractions. I don't think I could have.
Yeah.
Second, I think, Hunter Thompson once said that when he got out of the Air Force, he had a decision. He was either going to write for a living, or he was going to go live for a while and then write about it. And that was his choice. And he chose to just go ahead and start writing right now. And you know how his style is. He's in the story. So as he's living, he's writing. And that worked for him. I mean, Hunter Thompson's one of my all-time favorites. But I did the opposite.
Hunter Thompson was intense, for sure.
Oh, man. Dude.
Yeah. I've read about some of his schedules, about how he used to do stuff. And I don't even think he started writing until midnight. I think it was like he just wake up, do drugs, do something else, drink, do drugs, do this, do that, do drugs, shoot, whatever. And then when midnight rolled around, then he was like, well, okay, time to write,
Yeah, and then bang out 5,000 words.
Right.
And brilliant words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I kind of did the opposite. I didn't really write. I lived for 2 decades, working, all the stuff we talked about. And then I wrote. So I took the opposite approach for him, and I think it worked for me. I think people need to find what works for them. But those two things were crucial. So working a lot first, living a life, not starting to write until my mid-40s, and then also total isolation once I decided to write. Those were important to me. I offer it up to people. It may only work for 1% of the people listening to this, but that's my advice.
The living your life, when I'm talking, whether it be tweets or speeches, posts, whatever, one of the things that I always tell people about being so good that they just can't say no, right, is that you don't get that without authenticity. And you don't get authenticity without experience. You can't book read yourself into being authentic. You can't, anybody could just say, hey, I'm this, right? Until the real person that comes and pulls your card. And the way that they've done it is they've lived life. They've been out there, they've experienced it, they've gone through. Authenticity is a major, which is what comes across in your own writing, why people are so into it, is because that authenticity bleeds through it. You can't help but notice it, right? Like you're saying with some of your metaphors and some of the way that you describe your writing as earthy and being something that the working class would understand, right? That type of authenticity bleeds through. You couldn't have a doctor or a professor write Sanction because they haven't lived that life. They may have technical ability, but they don't have the authenticity, which is a major thing. I agree with you on that. Talking about favorite writers really quickly, we brought up Hunter Thompson. Is there anybody else that you're a big fan of, or that you like to some of the old school favorites or whatnot?
Excuse me. Yeah. So so Shakespeare. I'm actually a huge fan of Shakespeare. Coriolanus is one of my favorites. King Lear. Huge fan. I recommend those to people, even if it's hard. They have those versions where they have like the original on the left and then the English translation on the right, like modern American English on the right.
Regular English.
Yeah. So if people are intimidated by the Shakespearean language, get one of those. It'll help you, because I feel like Shakespeare really understood human nature. And to me, that's what makes a good writer. Do they understand the human animal? And so my next, after Shakespeare, my favorite is Melville, Herman Melville.
Oh yeah.
I brought him up at the beginning. He said,
Sure.
you know, a whale ship was my Harvard and my Yale college. Like, he worked those ships, man. Like, he did that stuff.
Yeah.
And his writing proves it. He has the same vibe you were talking about, that authenticity. Like, you knew he worked a whale ship. He was not
Right.
LARPing. He didn't get it out of a book. He lived it.
Right.
And so Melville is by far my favorite writer. Then, of course, Joseph Conrad, a huge fan of his. Then Faulkner, of course. Robert Penn Warren, he wrote all the King's Men.
Right.
Great writer, Southern. And then Flannery O'Connor, one of the only females writers that I felt really reached the same level as the male writers.
Yeah.
She wrote Wise Blood. Have you heard of that?
No, but I've heard her name before. Like, I've heard I've heard of the author. I got a look on my face because I was trying to remember what did she do? You know,
Yeah. So she was a Southern writer, same deal. So a lot of my influences are from the South. You know, my people are from the South, have
Sure.
that same Southern honor culture ethic. So a lot of my art, you know, my influences tend to come from the region that I come from.
Right.
But she was actually a Catholic in the South, which, you know, is rare, you know, because
Yeah.
And so her writing is scary good and brutal. Like, she's one of the most harsh writers that I know. And she wrote Wise Blood when she was like 25. So she was a 25-year-old woman, and she wrote this book that will curl your toes, man, make you have nightmares. Like, she's a scary good writer. So I like to mention her when people ask, because I really think she's worth reading.
Yeah. Did you ever, as far as any of the newer guys, and I say newer even though they're not really new, but they were kind of more mainstream, like, let's say Stephen King or who else? Well, they were kind of horror writers, but like Dean Koontz. A favorite of mine, real big favorite of mine, is a guy named Elmore Leonard.
Oh,
I don't know if Elmore Leonard is, and that's unfortunately he passed away now, but for those of you who aren't familiar with Elmore Leonard, you'd be familiar with movies that were made out of his books. Get Shorty was a book of his. Out of Sight, that there was a TV show for a while on called Justified that was based on a short story of his. There's all types of these different stories. And then there's another guy that's really good, James Elroy. And he's the guy that did LA Confidential.
Oh, right.
He's got that dude. That is, now his backstory is his mom was murdered when he was a kid. So he also wrote, I don't know if you saw the movie, the Black Dahlia movie. Black Dahlia, that was a book of his. And he wrote in these like kind of 50s noir settings, you know, to where it's just the real gritty, real in your face, not overly dramatic and explanatory, almost along the same lines as the granddaddy Hemingway. You know, the same type of, just, we tell you what it is, we get you to get the feel, and we keep on moving. Those type of examples that we have, right, that are out there, and being able to kind of build your own thing away from it, that's what gets you noticed, because there's a bunch of people that are out there just writing, but A, you have to be good, and B, it just can't be some generic BS. You know, it's got to be something like from you. I mean, that's pretty intense when a guy's living out in a tent, building a place out in the middle of nowhere, right? And then gets this thing to where he wakes up one day and he's like, I got to write. And you're on it.
Yeah. Intense.
It sounds like it. And you're out there hunting. Do you like bear?
I do, yeah.
I mean, it's
It's an
good.
acquired taste. But
Yeah,
I
because
can't,
I've heard mixed things about bear.
yeah, you know, one of the common things people say about bear, and it's true, is that they taste like what they eat. So if they,
Oh, okay.
yeah, if they eat garbage, they taste like garbage, you know. And bears are
Yeah.
notorious scavengers. They will eat garbage. So I usually take vernal bears, so spring bears. So they
Right.
use up most of their fat stores over the winter. And so
Sure.
it's better meat that way. I prefer venison. I still like deer. Deer's probably my favorite. But yeah, I like bear.
Do
Yeah.
they have any elk out where you're at?
Oh yeah, we have the second largest elk herd in North America in this county.
You you told me that. You
Yeah,
actually told me that because we've talked privately about doing some hunting or doing
yeah,
something, and you actually told me that, and I remember. You ever you bag any of bag one of
yeah.
those yet?
Got one, but it's a funny story because I'm so ridiculous. I'm such a ridiculous human. You know, my eyes are bigger than my stomach. You know,
My
and I'm
wife
just like,
says that all the time, dude. That's like her saying, "My eyes are bigger than my stomach." That's funny.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I had to. I won't tell you the whole story, but I basically had to make 4 trips because it was just too heavy. I had to
Oh
field dress
yeah.
it, clean it, all that, and I had to hike it out. I had my motorcycle. I have a WR450 motorcycle. I had to rig up a sled. I had to do all kinds. It was dark by the time I got back. I mean, it was a disaster because
Yeah.
I just was not prepared for the size of the animal.
Yeah.
But
For those of you that don't know, an elk is like they're like big like a cow big, like they're
yeah,
huge. It's not
yeah.
some small animal. Like these things
Oh,
are 1,000 problems no problem, or 1,000 pounds no problem. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I think mine was close to 800 pounds. It was ridiculous. And I was
Yeah.
just like, just way over eager. So I stopped hunting elk after that because I don't have the infrastructure. You know what I mean? Like I don't have what I need to process it and bring it back. I don't have a big truck anymore. I sold my truck and stupidly bought a BMW because I didn't know I was coming out here.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So I had a lot
Yeah.
of mistakes, a lot of mistakes. But so yeah, I mostly focus on deer now. We have a lot of mule deer out here, not whitetail.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, mule deer. That's they have some of those in Southern California too, I believe. Because up
Okay.
here in Northern California, it's the blacktail,
Oh, okay.
the blacktail deer. Yeah, yeah.
And
So
you
it's
bow hunt though.
correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm into bow hunting. I
Yeah.
and to be fair, I bow hunt because I can't rifle hunt. You know, I can't have the. I mean, I was real good with firearms, man. You know, so I had to get good. I had to adapt. You know, I can't have those. Okay, well, I got to get something else. You know, we're
Yep.
gonna have to do that. We're gonna have to do a hunt. Um,
Yeah.
I would, I would, I think it would be cool if I was able to come out there uh, for whether it's a couple days or whatnot, and we were just to go out and try and get something.
I would
I don't know how the.
I'd
Oh, go
love
ahead.
that.
No, I would too. I don't know how the hunting rules work out there because
Me
if
neither.
it's yeah, there you go. Remember, this is being recorded, man. We
Oh,
follow all the rules. We
always.
follow all regulations, all that. Now, that
Yes,
being
of
said,
course. Yeah.
hey, are you allowed to hunt mountain lion out there?
I have. Uh
Don't admit anything if you don't know, bro.
yeah.
Don't. You
Allegedly,
have in your dreams.
in my
Yeah.
dreams, allegedly I've taken one mountain lion. Yeah, because she was going to take me. See, I was
Yeah.
hunting bear and I noticed, you know, their cats are predatory, man. Bear are dangerous, but they're kind of skittish. They run off. But
Oh, especially black bear. You could
especially
yell
back,
at a
yeah.
black bear and make it run. I've had encounters with black bear too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But mountain lion, they're predatory. They stalk you. And I happened to notice that she was circling me. And so
Mm,
when she came to my 4 o'clock, I was actually prepared mentally. Whereas if I hadn't
mm,
seen those tracks, she might have got me because I was in the predatory mode. Like I'm hunting. And
right.
then it was like, oh, I'm being hunted. And the mountain lion out here are for real. And you've heard stories of Colorado cats
Yeah.
attacking humans. Yeah. And so
Mhm.
she came up on me and I just happened to get the drop on her, but it was luck. Um,
Yeah.
and then I've seen one other in the whole time I've been out here, and it was about a week or two ago, and I just saw her moving on my property and then go down the ridge, because I'm kind of on a plateau, so my property slopes down, and she just dropped off. So you don't see them a lot, and when you do, you should be very careful. Either get away from it or take it, because they will pounce.
Oh yeah, and interesting fact about mountain lions: they have, out of all the big cats, they have the strongest back legs. They can do an 18-foot vertical, 18 feet up.
Yeah.
Their back legs are like springs, right? Even stronger than like a regular lion, a tiger, all that stuff. And one of the ways that they hunt is they'll be up on something, whether it's some rock crag or some tree limb or something like that, and they jump down on whatever it is. And a lot of the times when they jump, mountain lions have these huge forearms too. Like if you look at if you see pictures of mountain lions, and I know for people that may not, they have these huge forearms. So when they jump, they do this. They grab around their prey and they're getting their thing right. However, many times when they jump down on their prey, they break the thing's neck. Like they aren't even having to like tear it apart or whatever, because the force of the impact of them jumping down kills them. That's why when I'm out with my girls or whatever, when we're out in the wilderness, because they're around here, I've seen them on my property, and I've got cam of one that was hunting me essentially. But I always tell them, look up, like don't keep your eyes on the ground, check out the trees, check out where you're going, because you don't know what's above you. And if one of those things jumps on you, it's going to be a wrap, man. I had one when I was hunting on this one property, and I'll have to show you the videos sometime, because I still have the trail cam video. But every time I'd go and set this cam, this mountain lion come by about an hour later, sniffing around, seeing what I was doing, which led me to the conclusion that every time I went out to that property, that thing was watching me. Yeah, exactly. So the one time that you see yourself being stalked by a mountain lion, you didn't see the 9,999 other times. They're creepy, man. I don't like cats, and I especially don't like those cats. No, I don't. As a matter of fact, when I saw that one in my backyard, Roman, I knew something was back there, because it was during the spring, summer, and there were frogs down on my property, and I could hear them, just chirping away, and then all of a sudden they just go quiet, right? And I can hear something, and it was that what do they call it? Crepuscular time, like right in the
That's right.
Twilight,
Twilight,
right? Yeah, and so, but it was dark enough to where I've got this big LED mag light, right? And I'm like, let me grab my mag light just to make sure. And I'm like looking way down the hill, like this and that. That thing was I came across like this and caught the eyes. Whoop, catch the eyes with the light, right? That thing was only about 15 feet away from me, crouching in the grass. And when I caught it, it went like this, I kept it on it for a second, because I was like, oh shit. And it stood up, like all slow too, wasn't afraid, turned itself sideways to me, and then just did this real slow walk away from me, while like giving me the whole side of its body, which essentially it was just showing me like, hey, look how big I am. You want to get some? You want to get some of this? And just calmly walk right off my property. But when you're in situations like that, and when you're talking about, you see them, you better take them. It's life or death. Like people don't understand that like all that other safety and civility shit go right out the window when you see a bear or a lion that's in your proximity that can just eat you if it wants to. Right? Yeah.
Oh yeah. I like to say I was too scared to be scared. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
Like all my higher functions shut down when I saw it. And you're right. She was above me a little bit because we have a lot of rock formations here. And I was kind of in a channel. And the rocks weren't that high above me, maybe 6 feet above me. But you're right. She was above me on this rock, this outcropping. And I was down.
Right.
And when I turned to my fore, she was right there. It was not as close as 15 feet. I would say it was closer to 15 yards. But everything shut down on me. I mean, at that moment, I was an animal. I was not Roman. I had never heard of a bank account or car insurance. None of that stuff. Like I was something that was either going to kill or be killed. And it just, but then later I kind of got the shakes, like after I had taken it and I realized, like what you said, that this animal had me in her sights for days, probably. Right. And I had only just been aware of it. My hands started to shake just a little bit. That's when the adrenaline jumped. That's when everything got a little scary, is afterwards, when I put it all together, like you said, of how much time I had been vulnerable. And she could have taken me any time. Man, that puts some fear in you, man.
Oh yeah. Man, I remember crawling, like crawling through these game trails, right? Like through bushes, like to where I'm literally on my stomach with my bow, like putting my bow on, and thinking back on that and going, man, I was literally proned out there to where something could have just jumped on me, the risks we take, right? All right, look, I know we could talk about hunting all day, and I know that these aren't supposed to be too long when I do these, but I like to talk, so my apologies. Before no, I mean, it has, man. I love talking with you, and I love the fact that, like you said, we do have many things in common, on top of just being writers. So it's cool to find a kindred spirit and someone that knows what you're talking about. Like when you're talking about something, you know that this guy gets it. And I know that that's how you are as well. And I really appreciate that. In closing, is there anything that you want people to know? Either it's you just haven't had the chance to tell them, or maybe it's something that you've heard about yourself and you're like, oh no, that's not right. That's incorrect. Is there anything you want people to know, or anything you want to clear up now that you have the floor?
Okay, sure. Yeah. I'm just going to wing this because I don't know if people think this or not, but here's something maybe people could think. I think a lot of times people are confused about how much of the book is fiction versus nonfiction. And I don't say this in a braggadocio way. I just say it because it's what they tell me, that the prose is so realistic that it feels like nonfiction. But I want people to keep in mind that it is fiction, that I've made a lot of this up, and that they can't take the opinions of the characters and even the narrator, because the narrator himself is a character, right? The narrator isn't me, right? He's a character. Sure. And I want people to remember that all the characters and all the people inside of it don't necessarily reflect my own opinions. And that doesn't mean I'm backing away from the brutality or the harshness or the meanness of the book. I embrace it. But that doesn't mean I believe everything that's in the book. One of the characters, here's an example. One of the characters is like, he's just kind of a jerk about writers, and he doesn't like Bukowski. He doesn't like Cormac McCarthy. I love those guys. You know what I mean? Like I'll fight someone to the death if they say Bukowski isn't a good writer, right? But one of my characters is that guy. He's the jerk that thinks that, you know what I mean? And a lot of times people will be like, you don't like Bukowski? And I'll be like, why do you think that? Like, well, Jack Forrest said he didn't like. I'm like, that's a character, bro. Like, that ain't me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in a certain way, it's a testament. It's a compliment that the writing's so realistic that they assume it's nonfiction or my opinions. One guy said, I can't believe you argue so vociferously, so passionately for an argument or for a position you don't have. He said, I couldn't do that. And so I guess it's a compliment in a way that I can do that.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to your, I call it an honest self-assessment. When I decided to turn my life around, I realized that I needed to be completely honest with myself. But at the beginning of this interview, you were talking about how you joined a cult that stressed brutal honesty. So when you're able to take that angle, you can look at things and see them for what they are and kind of take your own emotion out of it. You take your own feeling and whatever, because you know who you are, you know what you feel, and you can just bottle that up real quick and then look at it and just be like, all right, look, this is what it is. This is what it is. You know, it's being that brutal honesty. That probably has a big part to play in how you're able to write and how you're able to, like you said, argue different points that you don't even agree with. It's not even the way you feel. That's really cool, man. Before we close out, is there any? We know we can find your book, and I'll have this in the for those watching. If you go down in the link or bio or whatever the hell they call it on YouTube, I'll make sure to have Roman stuff in there. But is it sanctionthebook.com or where do people find your stuff?
Yeah, so it is sanctionthebook.com. You can find both books that are published there now. The third one will come soon. I also have a set of euchre cards. I don't know if when you were locked up, if you guys played euchre or spades, but
spades and pinochle were the big ones.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Euchre is just kind of a shorter version of spades, less cards, and it's a little tricky because the jacks shift, but it's similar. People who play spades and jailhouse games like that will know euchre. So I have a set of euchre cards that me and a guy designed together around characters in the book, which is really cool. And so people can find the deck of cards there, all at sanctionthebook.com, and then t-shirts as well, stuff like that. And then and then I'm on Twitter at Mcclay_Roman.
Mcclay_Roman, correct. And that artwork that's on those cards and all that, is that you, or is that a designer? Because you got some really cool artwork.
Thanks, man. Yeah, so a lot of it's my original ideas and artwork, but I draw on paper. I don't know if you've seen my other paper drawings of authors. I do portraits of authors. It's on my Instagram, which, by the way, you can find me on Instagram as well, under Sanction the Book. Okay,
cool.
But yeah, so then I gave those original drawings to a real computer art. He does vector art, like is a real professional.
Yeah.
And then he transmitted that into professionally done computer vector art, and then transferred those onto the cards. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's great for those of you that haven't seen Roman's products. I mean, besides the book, like he's talking about the cards, I believe you have posters too.
Yep.
That you have posters, shirts. Definitely check him out. And for those of you that don't know Roman, he's got a lot of momentum behind this book right now. So check out that their Sanction 1 and 2 are already out. Make sure you check them out. See what all the fuss is about. People are really into this, and it might be something that could do you some good somehow too. Roman, thank you so much for joining, man. And you and I are going to have to do a hunting trip again soon.
Oh yeah,
we're gonna have to get out there and get some meat. Not again, but just do one in general. We're gonna have to get out there and get some animal. So till next time, thank you for joining all, and stay safe out there.